Welcome to another episode of Morrison Madness. So today we're going to talk about being flexible in a relationship.
Oh, you said it
No?
too nicely. I figured
Is that not what we're going to talk about? What are we talking about?
No, that's what we're talking about.
What?
I just figured you'd start off with, the number one key thing needed for a marriage to work, build it up a little bit, and then that it's flexibility.
Well, it is. Because if
yeah.
not, when you're in bed with your partner and you roll over, one of you can end up getting thrown out of the bed, and then you've hurt your back, and you got to go to the chiropractor.
True story.
Flexibility is an important thing.
It is an important thing.
I mean, people talk about working out and staying in shape. I'm telling you, yoga and flexibility, that's where it's at.
Yeah, now we understand why so many people do yoga.
That's right.
Oh.
Absolutely.
Huh. All right.
And why so many people buy a king-size bed when they get married. Otherwise, you got to put ropes up around it.
Like the trampoline, you need that netting around.
I was thinking more like a WWE ring, yeah, but whatever.
Oh, too funny. So, flexibility in a marriage. That's a key thing.
It is.
Yeah. What say more, I guess.
What do I have to say more? And it's not just in a marriage. I mean, in any relationship, you need to have flexibility, and you need to have good communication.
Yeah.
And you need to be, patient with each other. You see too many times, parents not having patience for their kids and not being flexible. Especially if you have more than one kid, not each kid is going to have the same temperament, the same attention span, the same joy of things. I mean, I was lucky all my kids loved Star Wars.
Right.
But what if they didn't? They wouldn't have been my kids, but
no,
that's
would
a whole
have
other story.
Put them for sale somewhere. I don't know what you would have
They
done
just
with
wouldn't
them.
have been mine. I'd have had to have their DNA checked. I mean, they all look like me, but I wasn't sure they were mine until the Star Wars. I mean, even as an infant, I put on Star Wars, the music, and their eyes just get big. They'd be like, This is great.
Oh, too funny. So, when we first started talking about doing this podcast, we talked about communication and how communication is kind of key. But yet, we realized that communication, we don't think necessarily that's the highest thing. We do, it's tied maybe with flexibility, but that flexibility is a big important component.
Yeah, but you have to be able to communicate to be able to have that flexibility.
Right.
I mean, if you talk all the time and I don't say anything, we're not going to be flexible about nothing. You're not going to know what I think. So,
Right.
I mean, whether you're in bed or whether you're cooking meals or you're going shopping for clothes or a car, you need to be able to have a discussion about what it is that you want. You need to be able to be flexible.
Right. Right. So you wanted to talk a little bit about some examples of how we've been flexible.
Well, so, I mean, this is kind of our new set. We've got new microphones.
Yes.
We got a new backdrop here.
It's very exciting.
Yes. And so earlier today, we were in the middle of trying to get something done for one of my hobby businesses. And about 3 o'clock, you said, I really wanted to get that backdrop put up. And I was in the middle of packaging stuff up, and I said, oh no, there's no way that's going to happen today. It'll just take too long. And I kept counting stuff to get it packaged, and then I sat there and I thought about it, and I thought, you know what? That really isn't going to take that long. I mean, we have, at least 2 hours before our friend Joe, who does our video and audio stuff, gets off work, and then he's got to have time to get here.
Right. And we usually eat and relax a little bit before we record anything. But yeah.
And so the only thing that really would have been an issue is if we went to put that up and it completely didn't work. Putting the other one back up would have been a nightmare.
Yeah, that would have been a pain.
So then there would have just been an ugly wall back there.
Well, not just ugly wall, but black window because it's nighttime outside and that leads out to our deck.
Well, and the ugly wall around it because I never put the trim back up.
That's true, yeah.
When we put in the new sliding
door. Because it used to be is it French door? Is that what it's called? Where it swings in?
They're normal doors to me when they swing in.
But it's 2 panes. Like one was glass and one was the door. And so I think they're called French doors or I don't know. But it just,
maybe.
Every time it came in, it smacked the table.
They call them French fries. They're not from France. I don't understand that shit either. Whatever. So we switched. So I was sitting there and I said, you know what? Let's put it up. We can try and put it up. I can finish packaging this up later. It's not that big a deal. And it didn't take us that much time.
No, less than a half an hour maybe.
Oh, I think it took an hour to do the whole thing to because when we took the curtain out of the package, it was all wrinkled.
Right.
So we had to throw it in the dryer with a wet towel.
Well, we have another curtain too, but it's too busy for a backdrop for like.
And we put it up there, and it was way too long, and we had to take. It was a three rods.
Yeah.
So we had to take one of the rods out.
Right.
But you know, I mean, I know a lot of people, and it's happened to me. I mean, we'll be in the middle of a project, and I'll start to get frustrated, or you'll start to get frustrated.
Yep.
You know, and then we're short with each other. We've learned to walk away from that.
Right.
And we don't generally have that issue when we're in the middle of a project.
Right.
Even if we disagree.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a matter of taking that time to walk away, to think through it, to be able to have more conversation, but also being flexible. Like, I really did want this up, but I also knew that your stuff you wanted to try and get in the mail today. And so, you know, balancing that out, I had to be flexible and say, okay, it might not happen today, and we might not have the new backdrop for the next podcast. But I'm glad we did. I think it'll, because since our last one, if you have watched our podcast, you may have actually seen that in one of our last ones, it was a blinds, and one of the blinds just literally fell out of
one of the slats of the blinds just fell out
in the middle of a podcast. And we don't even blink. Like, we just continue going on, ignoring stuff like that happens, because that is the way our life usually goes, is things will happen all the time, and we just roll with it.
The important thing to take from it is, when I told you I didn't think it could get done, you didn't get mad.
No, right.
So a lot of people would be like, I want this done. I've talked about this a long time ago. We've talked about this repeatedly. We bought it specifically to get it done. We need to have this, you know.
Now, in
all
honesty, that may have been happening in my head.
Well,
but
I don't know.
But knowing that, you know, there's other things that are more important, it wasn't it wasn't something that had to happen. It wasn't a life or death situation. It's not worth getting in an argument or upset about. I needed to be flexible in what I necessarily wanted may not happen, and that's okay.
Yes.
You know, and then you thought about it more and realized that maybe it wouldn't take that long, so then your flexibility changed in the idea of, no, really, we could do it. Let's try and get it done.
Right.
So,
but again, we talked about it. So, I mean,
yes.
I agree that it's being flexible and being able to change, and a lot of times, and you've really had to adapt to being flexible, because I'm very ADD and switch gears on
all the
stuff.
time. It is catching. I swear.
Like when we went on our trip to Europe, you wanted to have this whole thing planned out, you know, and have a complete itinerary.
I just wanted to know where we were going to stay.
Yeah,
each night.
I wasn't worried about it.
No, I know. And
did we stay someplace every night?
Barely. There were nights. There were nights we pulled up to a bed and breakfast at 10 o'clock at night, and the bed and breakfast is like, why are you just getting here now? We made people upset.
Because the sun was still up like it was frickin' noon the farther north you go in Scotland in July. Who knew that shit? They should put that on their brochures. And it should be on their flag in fine print or something. I don't... But so, you were flexible with it and adapted to it. And yes. I knew what I wanted to do in Scotland. And
find all the Morrisons.
Yes. And we did it. Right? And I wanted to see all the Neolithic sites, right. You know, but I didn't have a timetable.
No, right.
And if I didn't get to one, it wasn't going to upset me.
Right.
I just wanted to go and be relaxed and spend as little or as much time at whatever place we were as what I wanted to do. I mean, really, even though it was our honeymoon, it really was a gift to me.
Yes.
Because I have wanted to go to Scotland my whole life.
Yes.
And I finally got to go, and I'm Scottish, so that's part of why I wanted to go.
Right.
And it was an amazing adventure for me, and I would love to go back. I mean, there's other places I would like to visit.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
I could go to Scotland every year for vacation and not get bored.
Yeah.
It was so incredible. And everybody that we met there was so wonderful. I can't say enough about my visit to Scotland and the people of Scotland. It was amazing.
And we might do a whole podcast on our trip to Scotland.
We could.
Tell stories.
There was lots of funny things that happened.
There are lots of funny things that happened there.
It was a very good time.
But coming back to the communication, I think, again, for me, not that I necessarily had to have every minute of every day planned out and stick to a strict schedule, but for me, it was a matter of, it's a new place, it's a strange place, I didn't want to be stranded and have to sleep in a car at some night.
I've slept worse.
And you were all about just flying by the seat of your pants, and that might happen. And yes, so I had to, communicate with you that that's not necessarily something I want, so we need to try and avoid it at all costs. But I also needed to be flexible in the idea that it may happen, and we're still on vacation, we're still having a blast, and that's what's important. So.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think it's any secret that I've been married before.
Right.
And in my other marriages, communication was not as good as the communication that I have with you. And I think in the process of...
It's because I can yell louder. No, I'm kidding.
The communication in our relationship has helped me be able to communicate better with other people that I have relationships with. My communication with my kids is better. My communication with my mom is better. There was a point in time... Well, I should say... So, like, one of the things that we communicate about... I feel like it was a year and a half ago. I had a kidney stone.
Yeah.
And I had just vaguely mentioned to you that my back hurt. And, I mean, over the course of 4 hours, it went from my back hurting a little bit to I couldn't even hardly stand and I couldn't get comfortable. And I would lay down on the bed and I would get down on the floor and I would crawl to the bathroom and try to go to the bathroom. And then I would get up and you kept telling me, well, I need to take you to the doctor. And I couldn't even get dressed because I couldn't sit still long enough and I couldn't get pants on. And it was crazy.
It reminded me of a little bit of, like, although you were in pain, if the pain hadn't been a part of it, it reminds me of the little kid that you want to lay down and go to sleep that is trying to think of everything that they can do to not lay down to go to sleep. Like, that's what you were just all over the house. You wouldn't sit still. You wouldn't lay still. And yet you were clearly in pain. And it was like...
And you were patient with me the whole time.
But it was like moving was the only thing that helped you not writhe in pain. I mean, I don't know how to explain it. Like,
but so now, anytime when I have back pain, right, if it's in that area,
right,
I'm like, just so you know, honey, I'm starting to feel that pain from, like, when I had the kidney stone. Because I want you to be prepared. If I start going downhill again,
so I can pack the hospital bag.
We might have to take a trip to the ER. Thankfully, I've not had another one. But I remember, before I knew you, my dad, I was... I can't even remember when this would have been, like 2000, 2001, something like that. I had the pet store, and my dad called my aunt, and had my aunt call me. She was calling me constantly, right?
Right.
And I was busy at work.
Right.
And I couldn't figure out why. And like 2 hours later, I finally called her back. I'm like, what the heck is going on? She goes, you need to call your dad right away. So I call my dad, and he answers the phone, and he sounds like he's drunk. And he tells me, I think I've had a stroke. I'm like, well, why don't you call 911? And he tells me, because my door's locked, and they'll fucking kick my door in, and I'm not paying to have a new door.
Right.
You have a key. Come up and pick me up and take me to the hospital.
And he's in Cedar Rapids,
yeah,
which
30
is
miles away.
Over a half an hour drive.
I'm like,
away.
oh my God.
Right.
This is stupid.
This is not something you want to wait on. So not only has it been 2 hours because you didn't understand why your aunt was calling you and why it was important, but now it's going to be an extra half
She
an hour.
never communicated to whoever was answering the phone that it was
right.
an emergency.
Right.
So then I call my sister and I jump in my car and I run over and grab her and drive up to Cedar Rapids. And we get there and we're helping Dad to the car, and it's like he's had a stroke. One whole side of his body doesn't work and his speech is all slurred.
That's so scary.
And we're taking him to work. And again, it sort of seems like he's drunk and he's telling me and my sister, and it's very comical now, and it was hard not to laugh even at the time, even though we were both scared. And maybe that's why he was telling it this way, is because he was trying to inject humor into it. But he's like, I can't even call it to work. You can't, if you call him sick, you don't accept it. You gotta call him fucking dead, I'm like, what?
You can't call
it the hell?
Oh my gosh.
So we get him to the hospital, and we're going through all of this stuff, and it's craziness there. And I think he's had a stroke.
Right.
So I'm demanding that I bring a social worker down so that we can fill out paperwork about, help me out here, what am I thinking about? Medical power.
Yeah, power of attorney.
For medical.
Yeah, for medical stuff.
Right.
Right.
And that kind of stuff. And they didn't have one on staff, and I'm kind of getting angry. I'm like, there's supposed to be a social worker on staff all the time. This doesn't make any sense to me. There's got to be somebody that you can call that can bring this down. And the doctor, and at one point, the nurse got upset with me and whatever. And I was obviously upset, and I was panicked and,
sure.
Worried about my dad. And so I'm kind of yelling. She calls security on me. And the security guy comes in.
Well, and people have to realize, too, that when you get excited, even if you're not upset, when you get excited, you get loud.
Yes, I do.
And
I have a
then
deep
people
voice.
think you're yelling
Yes.
all the time. And
I'm
you're
pretty-
not yelling.
Oh, I'm pretty sure I was yelling at that point. But anyway, the security guy comes in, and I see him walk in out of the corner of my eye, and I turned around and looked at him, and I said, "You fucking touch me, and I will lay your ass out." and he just stopped.
Right.
You know, I mean, he's not a police officer. He's a security guard. What's he, you
Right.
know? And I feel bad. I apologized to him later.
Right.
You know, I was scared for my dad.
Right.
So the doctor says to me, if your dad gives me a verbal, you know, okay, I will note it in the chart, you know, that you have medical power of attorney. My sister and I had agreed, because I have more medical experience than she did. I worked at the VA and stuff. And so Dad said yes. You know, that's what he wanted. He wanted me to have it. I would discuss anything with my sister. It's just the two of us. We've always gotten along in that way. So we get that taken care of, and you know, I feel like a couple hours go by. They're running all of these tests on my dad, and the doctor comes out and says, "So your dad messed up his diabetes medicine, and he accidentally took 2 doses, and his blood sugar dropped, and he's doing much better. We gave him a bottle of a bag of glucose."
Right. Sugar water.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, you know, he's doing much better. And I'm like, my dad's not diabetic. And he goes, yeah, your dad's diabetic. So when we got in the room, my sister and I with my dad, we gave him the what for about the fact that he was diabetic, apparently had high blood pressure, was on medicine for both of them, and neither one of us knew. He never told either one of us.
And your mom didn't know. I mean, your parents were divorced at the time, but their mom and dad have always been friends.
Well, she knew Dad had high blood pressure, but apparently didn't know he had
diabetes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so, and I'm, because I remember hearing this story before, and yes, then she even says, yeah, he didn't even tell me. And they had always stayed friends and fairly close, even though they got divorced.
Yep.
And yeah, she was not happy with him that he didn't tell anybody.
So we spent the whole night in the ER,
Right.
and then we're finally taking Dad home. and Dad says, "You know what this bill's going to be? This is going to cost so much money, and I had to take a night off from work, and all I needed was a fucking Snickers." So we get him home, and again, we give him the what for about, had you communicated with us, you know, I would have asked, "How's your blood sugar, Dad?" And we
Right.
could have just tested your blood sugar,
There you go.
and we could have given you a fucking Snickers.
Right. It would have been a lot cheaper Snickers at that
Yes.
rate.
Yes. And so, you know, but being, and after that, Dad was always good about keeping us both updated on all of that kind of stuff.
Yes. But again, having that understanding that communication is important, but flexibility with that communication. So
Yes.
you can't just communicate that what you want. You have to take into consideration everything that's going on and how other people are feeling and thinking, and be flexible with what you're thinking and wanting, and be willing to work with people on
Well, and when Dad got sick with cancer, you know, I had the medical power of attorney, but we then put my sister on there as the backup.
Right.
Because she lived in Cedar Rapids where Dad lived. And so if
Yep.
I couldn't get to the hospital,
in time. Yeah.
you know, she needed to be able to make a decision, not have to wait for me, not have to try to call me.
Yep.
You know, and again, so it's that flexibility.
Yep. Yep. Being able to be flexible within that. Is,
Right.
So flexibility is what we're saying is the most important component of marriage. We
Well,
realize
and it's great
so
that
many people say
you've got to
communication, but-
communicate with each other,
Yeah.
but then in that communication, you have to be able to be flexible.
Yes.
You know, I realize you might want stuffing tonight for dinner, but I'm craving a steak.
Right.
So we, you know,
Right.
one of us has to be flexible somewhere.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. So
we think that's a key to a good marriage. Right.
it's working
So
so far.
You know,
We'll figure out whether it's still working
I
tomorrow.
wanted a mixed drink tonight, and you wanted wine, so we were flexible. 2 different glasses.
We'll see whether or not it's still working tomorrow, but
Yeah. Next episode, we might be just one of us here.
you'll have to tune in to see. I think that's probably a good place to stop for right now, don't you?
Yes, I do. Thanks for
Great.
tuning in, and
Yeah, thanks for
hopefully
tuning
we'll
in.
see you back for the next one.
Take care.